So, like I said, what I tend to take notice, well, especially when Kamran is going against the grain here, and he was so positive about this one. Of course, I am a fan of his approach to storytelling, and so when he says something about a movie like that, I take notice. And I did, because of that, I really wanted to like this movie. I really wanted to like this movie for other reasons as well, because I've got certain genres of movies that I typically really like, and okay, so we talk about and watch and create a lot of sci-fi and fantasy around here. So obviously, sci-fi and fantasy are genres that I really like, but I tend to pay attention when a movie comes along that is not in one of those genres that I really like, because you have to really pay attention to that, because you realize, okay, wait a minute, this isn't about spaceships and wizards or whatever. So that's not why I like it. It's doing something else. But no, it's about something else, but it's still doing something else correctly. And that's probably for the storytelling and story structure side of things. And for example, Tombstone. We need to talk about Tombstone on Table Talk. Doug and I need to go into that, because I want to do a deep dive on Tombstone, because I do love that movie, and it's a classic movie about masculinity and has a lot to say about masculinity. But see, I'm not usually a Western kind of guy. Like, that's not typically my genre, but Tombstone is one of my favorite movies of all times. I love that movie. So, hang on. So I was not going to go watch the Barbie movie. It was not on my list of things to watch. But then when it started getting a lot of interest and some positive reviews from Kamran and so forth, I was like, well, then I should go be a part of this. And it would be really great if this is one of those movies that I would have skipped, wouldn't have really been interested in, but what if it came out to be really great? And it's like in that genre of Tombstone. James is agreeing. Tombstone is a great film. So yeah, Table Phoenix as well. Tombstone, every actor brings their A game. The story is fantastic. It hits hard. So even if you're out of that genre, so this is what I was hoping that Barbie was going to be. Andrew says, I admit I am not an expert on the toys, but I did get some of the references. I felt they weren't too distracting. Easter eggs are fun, can overwhelm a movie from the start. Yeah, now I should say that as well. I don't know anything about Barbie as far as Barbie history or Barbie lore or anything like that. So I can't evaluate it for truthfulness to I don't know if there is Barbie lore or whatever that is. I don't know. So I coming at this completely without any knowledge of that. All right, let me get my notes ready here. Okay, so this is from the storytelling perspective. And so actually, it turns out I was a bit surprised that, and by the way, I should say the only review of Barbie that I have seen is RM and Kamran's discussion of it yesterday. The link that I just put in the comments. So I haven't seen anybody else's review or anybody else's commentary on it. So all I know is what they said, and then I watched the movie. They got me interested in watching it, so then I watched the movie, and here's what I thought. And so the bottom line is that I am surprised that Kamran is such a big fan of this film. And it's because I think that its story structure was messed up. I was really into it for the first 20 minutes, even 40 minutes. It's a long movie. It's about 2 hours long. I don't generally say it's a long movie, and I'm not typically somebody who has a problem with longer movies. But I did really feel that this one was running long. So I was really with it. I was laughing. I was really enjoying it. So I was like, all right, well, this is going in a good direction. I can see why people are really big into this. For about the first half, but then I started to think that it started to get weak about the first at about halfway through, and then about the last third, I had basically checked out. So I thought that it started very strong, embraced what at least I perceive Barbie is, and had fun with that whole concept, and brought you into the world. But in the end, I don't think that it understood what story that it was trying to tell. And so this is going to be spoilers, by the way. So there are going to be spoilers here. In the end, it didn't know what story it was going to tell. It tried to do too much, especially with trying to do Barbie and Ken's story. It tried to give Barbie and Ken a storyline, and ended up really sacrificing Barbie's storyline when this should have been her story. and then going on way too long, I thought, with the ending and dragging things out. There's a dance sequence. Like, if you've been watching this movie, if you have watched this movie, there is a scene where the Kens have a battle. And by the time the Kens started having their battle, I thought, where is this going? I thought by that time I was really out, because then, like, the next scene after the Ken battle is a giant, like, Ken dance scene and dance number. And really by that time I was like, what has happened here to this movie? And I think they've lost what it was about. So, well, we'll talk about that. I'm going to star that, Sable. I'm going to start that. So we'll talk about that once we get to the end of this. This is like, we'll start with the structure here. So I thought that this movie set up in the beginning a very classic distinction between what Barbie wants and what Barbie needs. And this is a very classic way to set up a story, particularly with a hero's journey type of story. They made it very clear what Barbie wants. The opening scene is fantastic, which is basically the day in the life of Barbie, where everything is perfect and everything is going perfect for Barbie. And what is it like to live this very superficial, fun, glamorous, classic Barbie life. That's a fantastic sequence. And it sets up, what does Barbie want? And she makes this very clear. I know she says it twice. She might even say it 3 times. That what she wants is for nothing to change. She wants nothing to change in her world. And because she lives this glamorous life day to day, right? That is shown in the first 20 minutes. So Barbie wants nothing to change. But that sets up the distinction between what Barbie wants and what Barbie needs. Barbie needs to learn to become self-sacrificing, because she does need change in her world. She needs change in her world, and she needs to learn to become self-sacrificing and to start living for others, because she only lives this very vapid life for herself. They're all very self-involved, and yes, some of them are, the president and the Supreme Court justices, and there's the astronaut, and the doctor, and all the different Barbies that have been made. They're all running around, stuff like that. And I think it's important because on that level they have meaning. They can be an astronaut, they can be the Supreme Court justice, and all of this. And yet, even in that, they're living a very vapid kind of life. So Barbie's very self-centered, and she is very superficial at the beginning of this. And she wants explicitly everything to stay exactly the way it is. But early on in the film, we have this incident where she starts, after the main scene, she starts to think about death, and she starts to have strange emotions. And the comical scene where her feet, like, my heels are not supposed to be on the floor. Her heels go to the floor. And cellulite is the big thing. Oh my God, she's got cellulite. And we find out that there's this issue that somebody is dealing with some type of issue or trauma who seems to be playing with her, and it connects Barbie with the kid who's playing with her. And Barbie is saying, the weird Barbie. She goes to talk to the weird Barbie. We're going to talk more about her later. And basically the idea is that Barbie's going to have to go to the real world in order to help the person who is playing with her that needs help. And I thought this was a great setup right here. Barbie is going to have to think about somebody else, and she's going to have to go on this adventure to the real world to save them. And first, what does she do? She tries to hide from reality. Okay, they do the Matrix thing, except for it's like a pink, like, high-heeled pump or whatever it is, and then the Birkenstock, right? And the weird Barbie's handing it. And which one of these do you want to go and live in the truth, or do you want to stay basically in Barbie world? And Barbie's instinct is to hide from reality. She chooses the pink pump. I'm going to take the pink pump. But they kind of make her, so in that way, she does kind of refuse the call to adventure. Hey, you need to go and save this person. You're feeling this way because somebody else is experiencing pain, is in trauma. You need to go and save them. Barbie refuses the call to adventure. She chooses the pink pump, but she gets lambasted for that, and she is called to go on her adventure. She's got to accept the Birkenstock and to go into the real world. But even then, she makes going on that adventure completely about herself and only about herself, because she wants to be able to fix herself, because, you know, that way she can get her heels off the floor. And there's even the big banner as she's leaving in her pink Corvette, right? That's like, go save this girl, or whatever it is, go to the real world and whatever, and stop and keep from getting cellulite, right? So even when she's going on her adventure, she didn't really accept it to go and help somebody else. She went on this adventure to save herself, for a superficial, self-centered reason about her appearance, her looks, and it's all about her. Let me go over to the comments and see what's going on. If you didn't find the Ken battle funny, I can see how it would be too long. It was funny. It was funny. But I still felt that it was too long. And especially by the time that we got to, the end, Barbie, like I said, this is spoiler anyway. There's no reason for Barbie to become a human at the end of this. James says, Ken is an accessory, always has been. He doesn't need a story. I would bet the movie would largely remain the same for removing him. Okay, we're going to get to that. Let me star that, because I think Ken could have a very interesting arc. I think he might have been unnecessary in this movie. So they tried to do both. Now, I think that that Ken actually can have a very interesting arc, and it could be very relevant to today, and very, very interesting. But we'll come back to that. Andrew says, right before watching it, I rewatched the Barbie episode of The Toys That Made Us from Netflix. Reminded me that show, if you like toys, and it gave some nice background. I've seen that. Yes, I love The Toys That Made Us. The Toys That Make Us is fantastic. I love watching where there's the extended versions by the Power of Grayskull. Obviously, I got tons of He-Man stuff around here. So I love The Toys That Made Us, the He-Man episode, and also just by the Power of Grayskull, which is kind of extended, talking about the creation of He-Man. Talking about, so I love those episodes. Okay, so Barbie accepts the call to adventure, but in a very superficial way. So what is it that Barbie is supposed to learn on her journey? And she's going to go to the real world. Well, here's what they had basically set up. And again, I thought they had set up pretty well, that she was supposed to find out that one of the things that a Barbie doll does, a very serious thing that a Barbie doll can do, is that it's supposed to, that as a doll, she might have to take on the pains of the child who is playing with her. And this can be come in the form of being played with roughly. They introduced that with the weird Barbie, that why is the weird Barbie the way that she is? She's got weird cut up hair and strange clothes, and she's broken, and she's been drawn on and stuff like that. And it brings up that she's been played with roughly. But as this doll is taking on, as the child is dealing with some type of trauma, or if the child is dealing with some type of trauma, it may manifest in the toy, in the doll, right? And so that's when you get played with roughly. You're having thoughts of death, like Barbie is. You're feeling the pain and in the child's trauma. But as you're doing so, and as you're taking that on as the Barbie doll, you're improving the life of the child. I thought this was where that was going. Let me skip this point right here, because they had set this up, and particularly when Kamran was talking about things particularly possibly being, or he was talking about like a tearjerker or something at the ending, which I just did not feel. But what happens when Barbie is confronted with that reality about the deep side of being a toy, of being a doll, and what you might have to sacrifice for the child who you love and who is playing with you? Well, of course, she would try to hide from that reality, but she's going to have to, during her character arc, and I think a character arc was definitely something that Barbie was missing in this story. She's going to have to learn to be self-sacrificing. And there's no moment in that story where that happens. So, but what was being set up was that she was going to have to sacrifice her perfection, like physical perfection, because that's what she values so much, to improve the life of the child that she's searching for in the real world who's having a problem. So you're going to see, they call her stereotypically Barbie, was going to sacrifice everything that makes her superficially Barbie and that she values so much in order to help this child out. And that could have been very powerful. And in fact, that's where I thought we were going. And if somebody was talking about like a tearjerker kind of moment, in order to help that child, I thought that's where we were going. Now, that would be a very heavy kind of Barbie story. That would have been a very heavy, excuse me, very heavy Barbie story. There are also elements of the story that I thought were left in because, like, possibly from some other iteration where it was a lighter story, but they kind of set up that going on. And they even set up the perfect mentor for that situation because they set up Weird Barbie. Weird Barbie is supposed to be, I believe, really important in the story and then ends up not being. Why is Weird Barbie so important? Because, okay, Weird Barbie was the herald calling Barbie to adventure, but then also Weird Barbie needed to be the mentor for Barbie. Later in the story, when Barbie can't quite get it together, this is probably about 60% of the way through the movie or something like that, and she needs to have what Lou, if you watch Lou on Table Talk when Lou is here, when Lou talks about every story, the hero's got a moment where somebody says, you know what your problem is, and tells them directly what they've got to fix. And that was supposed to be Weird Barbie. Superficial Barbie is having this trouble dealing with self-sacrifice. And Weird Barbie is supposed to guide her through that moment because you're supposed to, at that point, you would have revealed what Weird Barbie really was. Because she, through that rough play, you've introduced the idea of rough play and stuff like that, but then you really understand what caused that when Weird Barbie explains and has her mentorship moment with Barbie about 60 or 65% of the way through the film. She, the Weird Barbie, through that rough play, took on the pains of the child who plays with her to help that child through some type of major trauma. Okay, and it nearly destroyed her. And but Weird Barbie points out, even though she has been how proud she is of her child, even though the child is now grown and is now well adjusted and is in some type of great career or whatever it is that child is doing. And even though Weird Barbie has now been discarded and forgotten about, she still looks on with pride on this child that she was able to help. And that would have had a serious emotional impact because that would mean that, ironically, even though Weird Barbie is the outcast among the other Barbies in Barbie world, she was the only one that actually fulfilled her mission as a Barbie doll and as a toy, self-sacrificing herself for the well-being of her child. And that would have hit hard, and that would have shaken Barbie up, and then would have gotten Barbie in action and in gear to move on to the third act of the movie to save that child by sacrificing herself. Okay, that's what they set up in this movie. It was going to be a hard-hitting movie. I mean, it started light. It started great. It started light and happy, but they set this up to really have this impact in the movie. And they decided not to pay it off. They decided not to pay it off in a big way. About halfway through this movie, they basically drop the entire storyline about Barbie needing to go and help that child. And they basically drop it, and about halfway through, they all come back to Barbie World, and it's about saving Barbie World from Ken. Okay, so they set up this really great storyline about the relationship between Barbies and toys, Barbies and children and their toys, but then they balk halfway through the film and make it into something else. Let me go to the comics here. Let's see. Oh, there's a lot of comments going on over here. I mean, can we catch up on my drink while we go over here? My niece was very rough on her Barbie, sculpted every one of them. That would have been very Toy Story-ish and a better direction that it sounds like they went. Yeah, there are elements of Toy Story in that. There are definitely elements that were there that were a lot like Tell Story. Steel Mongo says avoiding cellulite is still a worthy personal goal. James says, so far it feels like they're bringing Barbie low from a paragon of success to a state to strive for and forever fall short of for little girls, as well as mistaken ideal for psychological help. Well, I do feel like they address a lot of that because the Barbies think that they have solved all the world problems because they are so successful. They're astronauts. They're doctors there, the Supreme Court justices that are present, all of that. So they perceive that they have solved all of girls' problems, and that ends up not being true. So I like that actual part of that. Also important that Barbie expected to be greeted. Okay, so this follows up James' comment here. When Barbie's in the real world, Barbie expects to be greeted as someone that was inspirational to girls and made the world a better place for girls. She thought the real world was like Barbie Land, and they have a character completely reject Barbie. The girl who ends up not being the one who's actually Barbie's trying to go there and help, but should have been the one that she's trying to go there and help, ends up rejecting Barbie in a big way. And they kind of have a reconciliation, but that moment should have been much stronger. It just kind of, that whole storyline, because it fades away in the second half. Well, see, a lot of films that center on a strong female character have no character arc because the idea is that the strong female character is already perfect the way she is, and she has to realize that she's externally suppressed. I don't think that wasn't the issue here, because Barbie was clearly flawed in the beginning. Like I said, superficial, and all of that. So she had the flaw that she really needed to overcome. Let me see. Let me scroll down a little bit. Oh, Sable says, I already like Heath's proposed Barbie movie better than the one that I've heard reviewed. Thank you. There would have been a velvet. Yes. Draw from the Velveteen Rabbit as well. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. I like that resolution for Weird Barbie. What a shame it doesn't go there. I know. That could have been such a big payoff. Are we actually talking about some movie that's actually for little kids? Kronos, are you part of the Geekverse? Sable says, all of your reading and discussions about story structure are certainly paying off, Heath. Even if that was how the Barbie movie played out, I would love to go and see it. Overanalyzing stuff. Don't be so harsh. This is where we're going through here. The intention, the reason that I'm doing all of this is because, I think be harsh. Because the reason that I'm doing this is because I'm trying to write stuff myself. So this is going through and analyzing. This is the graduate level seminar analysis on story structure. Let me go over here. Jappard says, I've heard conflicting stories about the movie. Andrew says, I think that I have two. I have two, but only because of like headlines and stuff like that I've seen that, this movie, this movie's terrible from the people you typically would think that would say this movie is terrible. But then I started hearing some good things about the movie. But then, like I said, it ended up surprising me from the story structure perspective that like Kamran was a big fan. As Kamran and Lou will surprise me in that frequently. Well, not frequently, but often. Like I'll think, now here's a movie like for all of our story structure analysis that is really lacking in that, and that's why it's so weak. But sometimes they'll still like it. Kamran said that he thought that actually all the different storylines, because I am giving a very Barbie focused story and making it Barbie's story, because I haven't even talked about Ken yet. Okay, and they bring a lot of Ken into this movie, especially in the back half, and Barbie fades away. But Kamran said that he thought the two storylines fed together well, and I did not think so. Weird Barbie would have made a perfect enlightened hero of the story, written that way too, reflecting the wisdom real Barbie needed, opposite of beauty. Yes, exactly. And Sable Phoenix says, with Weird Barbie is supposed to be that. Weird Barbie was the visit to the wise man or wise woman, the crone archetype. That's exactly what sure, it's all bright pink and all colorful and all of that, and Barbie styled, but that's the archetype that Weird Barbie was supposed to be playing. Okay, so let me continue here. So let me take another sip. Okay, so I was going to say that once Barbie accepts that what she has to do is make the sacrifice for this child, you can plant something earlier in the story that's going to return some elements to stereotypical Barbie and allow her to return to Barbie world. There's plenty of magic and craziness in this movie anyway. You just kind of run with it. So that wouldn't have been out of place. and you come up with some reason about why that didn't happen for weird Barbie, but you can have it happen to stereotypical Barbie. She can't get rid of all of her scars, metaphorical or psychological or physical. Like, you still need to have her have this, like she might still have the cellulite at the end, or she should still be flat-footed or something like that. But she comes to terms with that, and she returns more real. Okay. And here's where you put this in. So I found a point for that magic, because early on, we have the same, superficial Barbie. Once she enters the real world, she's sitting at a bus stop with an old woman. And this is very soon after superficial Barbie gets to the real world, and she has a touching moment with this old woman where she says, "You're beautiful," and the old woman says, "I know." And then either Barbie cries right before that or right after that, I can't remember, and then they move on. And somebody was telling me, see, where did I learn this? Because I said I haven't watched the commentary or anything like that on that. But somebody was saying, it may have been in Kamran's discussion with RM, that the studio wanted to cut that scene. So that scene with Barbie having this touching moment and telling this old woman that she's beautiful, the studio wanted to be cut because it had no purpose, and that the director apparently fought to keep it in and said, like, if we don't have that scene, why are we even making Barbie? But I think the studio was right to cut that scene. That scene should have been cut because in its placement, it was not right. That end, once Barbie realizes that, here's what you should have done. You should have set up Barbie's encounter with that old woman early on in the film. Okay, after she comes to the real world, which, by the way, going from Barbie world to real world is a very clear hero's journey demarcation of going into the other world. They start going back and forth between Barbie world and the real world all the time, and that cuts down on the impact of making the hero's transition from their everyday world to the other world and then back. So if the story is going to be about going from Barbie world, entering the other world, dealing with the real world, then she'll come back to Barbie world at the end. But halfway through the story, they just start going back and forth. Once she gets early on, when she gets to the real world, Barbie needs to encounter that old woman and ignore her, or otherwise rebuff her, or be disgusted by her, or maybe this is the first time she's ever encountered aging. Maybe she doesn't understand what's going on with this woman. Why is she wrinkled? Why is she old? That's what should have happened. So her first and only encounter with this old woman is to look at her and smile and have a tear run down her cheek early on in the film and say, "You're beautiful." But no, superficial Barbie should have rebuffed that early on in the film. Then after she makes her sacrifice, then she makes an atonement. It's an atonement with the mother. Okay, an atonement with the mother. That's when she should have recognized the beauty of the old woman. And in recognizing the beauty of the old woman, that's when, rather than dealing with all of the harsh consequences of her sacrifice, she's allowed to be not fully restored, but repaired enough to return to Barbie world. That's how you use that. That's when that relationship with the old woman would have come in. Because as it stands right now, you're right. It's completely out of place. The studio was right. It was completely out of place in that start of that, in basically the start of the movie. So that's how she gets back. Okay, so then Barbie returns to Barbie world. Okay, after that experience, she returns to Barbie world and is herself the agent of change for Barbie world. Okay, because what did she want at the beginning of the story? She wanted nothing to ever change about Barbie world. And if the hero, in this case, the heroine, but the hero gets what they want, you know you're going to be telling a tragedy. So you can see how it would be a tragic story if Barbie world is the exact same superficial and vapid place that it was at the start of the movie. Barbie didn't want it to change. She becomes the agent of change by coming back to Barbie world, This is the classic trope of returning with the elixir to share what has been learned in the other world with all of the other people in what was her regular world, Barbie world. She returns and she brings the message of self-sacrifice and what it is that Barbies are really supposed to do, and changes Barbie world. Now they're no longer going to live in a vapid, materialistic, superficial existence. The Barbies now have a real purpose in helping others, and not just their superficial purposes, which were all about, like, being the astronaut and, being all of the career Barbies and things like that, and having the great car and stuff like that. They're forever changed because they understand their role in helping others. That was supposed to be the movie. Now notice I didn't say anything about Ken. Ken could have been around in that story, because I mean, some of that was funny. Like some of the stuff, like I laughed, like when Barbie, they show up in their roller skating and classic Ken and Barbie clothes and stuff like that. And they're getting looked at, and Barbie says, "We need to get some other clothes." And they walk into the store and they walk out and they're wearing like glamorous cowboy and cowgirl outfits, as if that's what makes you blend in. So I mean, there were elements all there that, and Ken could have been there. That way she has somebody to talk to or stuff like that. But it wasn't Ken's story. So I would have made that story very Barbie focused. So this is what we've been learning every time we've been doing story analysis on Table Talk and stuff like that. So yes, we take deep dives into the story analysis. So we're going to talk about Ken in a moment. Let me go back up here. Take another drink and see what's going on here. Oh, lots of comments going on today. We'll talk about that later, but that's the DC RPG. Yep, we're going to talk about that. I did notice also that I got the first playtest stuff for Cool Name RPG. I'll talk about that later. That's from Mark Tassin. Good morning, Wildberry. Good morning. Good to see you here. Chronos says, so again, what we get is that writing in movies is not up to par with good storytelling and entertainment, right? So this is definitely a movie, I think. So I'm trying to figure out why this movie is so popular. Now, I think this is the power of the franchise. I mean, and obviously, I think it opened strong. There's obviously a lot of nostalgia here. When I went to see it, I was with people dressed in pink, standing in line. I was like, oh, I can tell exactly where everybody's going to. And it was a packed theater. So obviously there is a lot that is striking right with this, striking the right chord with a lot of people. I think that obviously it's successful despite what I think is ultimately a weak story, and doesn't go in the direction that it really could have and really hit hard. You see people who are not liking it. Okay, because we're not dealing with the culture war here. We're dealing with the story structure and the story analysis and what the message it was trying to tell. But you've got the people who don't like it, and culture war stuff. You've got the people who like it. Then you have the people who are, well, maybe it was actually not so bad after all from the culture perspective and all that. And you're having all that conversation. So I think probably also that controversy, that culture war controversy, is probably driving a lot of interest in it. Probably, I think. Let's see. Scrolling through here. Let's see. Wild Barley says, low key, the plot is basically Final Fantasy X in a lot of ways. I don't know. I do not know the plot of Final Fantasy. I never did Final Fantasy. Sable Phoenix says, that's genius. Thank you. Too bad you didn't write the Barbie movie. Maybe I should have written the Barbie movie. By the way, I did finish a rewrite of my first 10 pages of the Rabavania movie based on the notes I had received, and it is going well. Well, maybe one day. All right. Barbie meeting He-Man would have been funny. There was a trailer where Barbie and the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles were together. Yeah, I didn't understand that. Wild Barley says, yeah, the line about losing interest in after he found out something didn't involve horses was hilarious. Yeah, but I didn't completely understand that. I guess that was I guess there are a lot of horses in Barbie or something like that. There was a whole lot of interest in horses, and I suppose that might have been a lot of the Barbie lore or something, that Ken's always riding a horse or something. Well, okay. So, okay, let's get, I'm going to save that because that's Ken right here. Andrew says, I think your ideas are interesting, but prefer the movie they gave us. I feel like your film is too much Toy Story for me. Could be. Fine. That's fine. Let's see. Sable Phoenix says, striking the chord is thanks to marketing. The cross-marketing thing they did with Oppenheimer and a lot of celebrity buzz seems to have worked for opening weekend, but we'll see how it falls off. Okay, so let's see. Okay, so about halfway through the movie. Now, if you didn't want to do that movie, there are other movies that can be done. So, okay, so to address Andrew's point, Andrew says, okay, I don't really like that movie because maybe it's drawing too much from Toy Story or the Velveteen Rabbit, and maybe we don't want to have that have a really heavy-handed kind of emotional hitting story like that. Okay, so maybe you don't want to do that. So is there another movie that you could tell? And yeah, I think there was. And see, I think that was a weakness because they drop halfway through the movie, they drop the storyline about Barbie helping the child, basically bring everyone to Barbie World and have Barbie save Barbie World from Ken, trying to restore it to its original state, which was, well, the point that they set up in the beginning was that Barbie World needed to change, and Barbie herself specifically needs to accept change and become different. So to have the movie swap about halfway through and become all about trying to make sure that Barbie World is kept in its original state, I feel is counter to the original message. But okay, let's say that we wanted to do something else with this. Let's say we didn't want to do Barbie running around the real world, because there are reasons to not do that. There were a lot of elements about that that could have been fun, that were funny, and that you probably could have added even more humor if you stayed with Barbie trying to deal with the real world while she's trying to save the child or whatever. To me, that kind of a reason to not do that movie, aside from the emotional side of things, a reason to not do that movie would have been to say, hey, Barbie needs to show off Barbie World. Let's actually have this in Barbie World. I'm thinking about the He-Man movie with Dolph Lundgren here. Generally, I probably would have originally said, let's reject that idea. That maybe we don't need to have that idea. Just because if this is Barbie, let's not have Barbie go to the real world. Kind of like how having Dolph Lundgren's He-Man spend the first 20 minutes or 15 minutes of the movie in Eternia. And then for budgetary reasons, in that case, it was like, we got to get He-Man off of Eternia and we got to have him walking around in the real world so we can just, be shooting in this, fast food joint, and walking down the street and in this high school gymnasium rather than having to do like Eternia sets and stuff like that. So part of me probably, especially if I were more Barbie oriented for the same reason I'm kind of He-Man oriented, I would have gone, no. We're not going to send, it would be funny to have Barbie walking around in the real world dealing with all that. But this is a Barbie movie. Let's keep Barbie in Barbie World. And let's do that. Okay. Because clearly they wanted to do a lot of that because they spent a lot of time in Barbie World because they brought them all back in basically halfway through the film. In which case you could do the theme of Barbie World being under threat. But then your inciting incident doesn't need to be, oh my God, Barbie's got to go help this child. Your inciting incident needs to be a threat to Barbie World. And Barbie has to accept the call to adventure to save her Barbie World from its external threat. And its external threat could have been the, what do they call it? The manosphere stuff. That Ken gets a hold of. Like, so here's where you could have had that. So you could have opened up with the same stereotypical day, that Barbie has and have all that scene. And by the way, so here's a fantastic line that I loved early on. And this kind of goes back to, I think something that James mentions as Ken as Barbie's accessory. There is a line that's fantastic in the opening, I thought, that was Barbie has a good day every day because she's Barbie or something like that. Barbie has a good day every day. Ken only has a good day if Barbie looks at him. Okay, that's setting up Ken's problem because you're right. Okay, so Ken here is also a flawed individual. So I like it because they're both flawed. So, but we have a flaw with Ken here, And even though he's the accessory, that's the hurdle that he's got to get over. And in this case, it is kind of a gender swap, because if you think about, okay, some kind of stereotypical girl who doesn't have an identity out of being the girlfriend of being a girlfriend to her boyfriend. Okay, we're gender swapping that now because that's Ken's situation. And I do like that idea. I like that idea, and I like it being said very directly early on that Ken only has a good day if Barbie looks at him. So he's very much attached to Barbie, and that's his problem that he needs to get a hold of. So what if you had, what I don't listen to him, so I don't know, but like these dating podcasts and things like this about how to become a pickup artist, or something like that. What if you had, okay, there's a breakdown between the real world and Barbie world, and all of a sudden, like all of the pickup artist dating podcasts and stuff start getting beamed into Barbie world. And that's the inciting incident that starts to mess up Barbie world. And particularly all of the Kens start listening to this, and they're like, wait a minute, we didn't know we could be anything other than just, an accessory to Barbie. Then you could have run that whole story, and you could have had Barbie world breaking down. You could run the whole thing basically in Barbie world, which apparently it seems like they basically wanted to do, and run this storyline about the relationship between Ken and Barbie and the relationship between men and women. And of course, you could make that very relevant in today's world. And then you could go on that, and you could have Barbie and Ken confronting that. I thought that also, see, you can tell the different themes of the movies, that the different themes, I don't feel like they complemented each other terribly well, because one of them is about the Barbie's was clearly supposed to be something about self-sacrifice. I think that's the way that was set up. And I do think that Ken's arc was something about becoming his own man. Okay. And dealing with that. But those are different themes. And when you're trying to do two separate stories together, they're most effective when both of them have the same theme and complement one another. And the most masterful example of this is Finding Nemo, because both the father's arc and Nemo's arc deal with the same thing. They deal with fear and loss. So you're dealing with fear and loss on both sides, and you're watching how they both deal with that. So if we had some way to have Barbie and Ken dealing with the same thematic problem, I think that would have made it better if you're going to try to interweave the two. But I don't think I would have. I think there were two movies in here. Have Ken in dealing with trying to grow out of becoming an accessory, and then have Barbie's problem in that situation would be that she's got to realize that effectively she's an abusive girlfriend. And they have got to reconcile that together. They've got to reconcile that in some way. Another line that I really loved in it, because at the end of the perfect day sequence, when Barbie's after the big Barbie party at the end of the day, because every day ends with a giant Barbie party. But at the end of the Barbie party, what do you have? You have girls' night and the sleepover and all of that. And Ken wants to stay over with Barbie, and Barbie's like, "You can't stay. Every night is girls' night." And so she sends Ken by the wayside and sends him away. But then later, when Ken gets all setting up the his Ken house and all of that, he repeats the same line to her, that you can't stay because every night is boys' night. And I thought that was powerful, because Barbie gets that line turned right back on her, and she has to confront what it's like to be on the receiving end of that feeling, of that line. So the resolution of that should be them realizing that they need to be a team, that they need to be together. They need to appreciate one another, and they need to, be attentive to each other's needs, and they're going to be stronger together. And so you end up with the plot, you need to set up the plot so that they're going to be stronger together once they realize that Barbie can't just be doing Barbie world all the time, and Ken can't be doing the Ken Casa house all the time. They're going to be stronger together, and they need to get over that. They did not go that way with this movie. So I said they need to reconcile, but instead Barbie, in a line that I thought just was brutal, says that she doesn't even love Ken. This is toward the end of the movie. She says, I don't love you, Ken. And I was like, oh my God. So, it's pretty easy to be cynical about human relationships, I think. And you never really know what's going on inside other people's relationships. You're going to know that from the real world. People can be presenting the perfect relationship, but then inside there can be all kinds of trauma and all kinds of things that are going bad. So when I'm thinking about Barbie and Ken, like when Barbie says, I don't even love you, Ken, or whatever that line, she denies that she even loves Ken. I was like, oh my God. It's so easy to be cynical about real world relationships. And now I find out that Barbie doesn't even love Ken, and they're got to break up and go their own way and stuff, something like that. And I was like, well, that was not I did not think that was the right solution. Ken did need to become his own person. That, if you're doing that story, that's what needed to happen. But they needed to be together at the end. They needed to bring together the masculine and the feminine at the end, I thought, and be Ken and Barbie in a big way together, or Barbie and Ken, or which, they needed to be together at the end. So I think I think Ken could have been very interesting. I think the whole Ken arc could have been very interesting, but I did not think that trying to put them together worked like that. Let's see, looking at some comments here. They did use the Barbie girl song. Well, apparently they redid the Barbie girl song, because I was like, before I started this live stream, I said, let me play the Barbie girl song. You get psyched up for Barbie here. And apparently there's this new rap version of the Barbie song. So we got to revert. So I go back and watch the original. That's always been Ken. You don't need to buy Ken to play with Barbie. You can if you like, but you don't need to. It's the definition of an accessory. Flip through here. So Barbie needs change, but Ken does not. Well, my point about change was that in the way that the movie was originally set up at the beginning of that movie, Barbie does not want anything about her world to change, but she needs change. Ken is a bit different with regard to the change, because he also needs change. They both need change. But Ken doesn't really realize change is possible. See, he doesn't really realize that he wants it. He doesn't even want it. He doesn't realize it's possible. That's why I would have had, for some reason, if the world between Barbie and real world is breaking down, all of a sudden Ken is listening to a pickup artists on podcasts and something like that. Doug Burton says, was the movie anti-relationship? Well, I kind of felt that way with regard to, because of the way that it ended with Barbie and Ken. Now, it did have a character who comes out and gives a very forceful defense of motherhood, and not women not always having to be astronauts and engineers and all of that they can have relationships with their children, and that this is an important part of that. So it wasn't from that side, but it was kind of but I thought it was a weird message that Barbie and Ken didn't end up together. At the end, I think it goes on. The end goes on for too long, and they do have Barbie becoming human, and I thought that was completely unnecessary. That Barbie, if they were doing the one where she returns from the real world and comes back to Barbie world, she needed to stay in Barbie world and having changed Barbie world. I didn't see any need for her to become a human at the end of that movie. Well, I think the reason that that one works, or is arguably working for some people, is because it's about making Ken independent of Barbie. I think that's the message that was trying to be sent. I think it's trying to say, but because of the reasons I've talked about and the two different streams of the movie, they don't really work to me together. But like Cameron is talking about that what's Ken got to learn? He's got to learn independence from Barbie. So he didn't want Ken to be Barbie's boyfriend. Oh, that was a reply to Sable Phoenix. Oh, okay. He mentioned the solution was that Ken's problem was for Barbie to force him back into his assumed role. Ah. Hey, Vision. Good morning. Well, okay, so let me go over here. Where did I start? So, yeah, so at the end, yes, the very end of the movie, she does set up a gynecologist appointment. But I wasn't sure. I wasn't sure. Like I thought that the way that it was going, I thought, okay, then what's going to happen with Barbie? Like I said, the ending I thought took too long. But then she's getting out of a car, and I thought that she was going to go get a job. Like I thought that she was going in to start work someplace, and that she was going to start she was going to say, she's talking to a receptionist, and what are you here for? I thought she was going to say something like my job interview, or I thought there was going to be something about her starting an entry level job, because Barbie is so used to, hey, you're the astronaut, you're the president, you're the brain surgeon, you're the whatever, that I thought that at the end there, okay, Barbie's going to become human, and then she's going to go and try to learn to do something for herself and not just basically be handed it. Hey, you're the this, you're the this, you're the this. She's going to start, because I for a moment I was afraid they were going to go make her the CEO of Mattel. But then I thought, no, they're not going that way. She's going to go for an entry level job, and she's going to start at the bottom, and she's going to learn stuff. But no, she was going to a gynecologist appointment. And I guess that means that because she's real now, she got female parts. Or it could be funny because there's no gynecologists in Barbie world because none of them have any genitalia. So yeah, that was the end. They ended on a joke, but they could have had her. I think they could have had her smile or something like that and go for an entry level job. So yeah, but see, she doesn't really care about him. She's annoyed by his presence, and I think that was probably because they were trying to take a young girl's perspective to that. And why is this guy around? So I don't know. Let's see. Was there anything else? Okay, there's just a little bit more. Oh yeah, we got time. Because these are just picking up some smaller points here. That this, if you wanted to go the real world and you wanted to go just comedy and you didn't want to go the serious hit, but you didn't want to come to the real world, then you could have had just a really fun comical movie about an escaped doll in the real world. And there were a lot of those elements, in the film, in about 25% to 60% of the way through. There were a lot of those elements in the film. And so that makes me wonder if at one time someone started it that way. Hey, let's have a Barbie movie, and wouldn't it be funny if Barbie escapes into the real world and is having to deal with a whole bunch of issues, and we're just going to do this as a comedy. You could have done that movie. Now, I think the one with Barbie rescuing the child has more gravitas. I think that if you really want to show off all the elements of Barbie world itself, it needs to take place in Barbie world. And then the relationship with Ken is the story that you would tell. But you could have done, I think, a perfectly fun comedy about that. Because you did have the CEOs. Because I haven't, in discussing those storylines, I never even talked about the CEO and all of the suits in Mattel. And there was even an FBI agent that calls up at one time. And that all had to do with the Barbie is escaped and on the loose in the real world. And so none of that really, I guess if you were going to do the Barbie trying to save the girl, then one of the antagonists that you would have could be the CEO of Mattel trying to get Barbie back in a box. I guess that could have worked, depending on how you play it. It's a bit of an absurdist kind of thing that might not cross well with the more serious, in that story, more serious story about Barbie. But I guess you could do it and integrate those two. But you ended up, you had the idea that also there was going to be some there were going to be some serious weird stuff happening because of the crossover between Barbie and the real world. And then the real world going to Barbie, both of these. The CEO was like, oh my God, something like there's going to be chaos like you've never seen. So in a more comedic movie like that, you bring together, oh my God, the barrier between Barbie world and the real world is breaking down. And then you see what happens in the Barbie world influences the real world and all of this. But you never really get the major chaos that the CEO is promising because this is happening. And I think that's because that's part of an entirely other movie that was going on. So like, you know, they have like when Ken redecorates the Barbie dream house to be his Ken dream house. Apparently in the real world, now all of those Ken houses are being made and they're shuffling them off and they're selling a bunch of them. They're like, you see the Mattel warehouse. They're like, oh my God, the Ken, like the Ken saloon or something like that. It's got like Western doors that open up to his bar and stuff like that. And so it's like those are flying off the shelves. There's a mixed message with the CEO because later the CEO, when told about, hey, we should do ordinary Barbie. I mean, this sounds like a completely third type of movie, right? This is the third movie that is in this movie. When the CEO is told, hey, we should do ordinary Barbie, he's like, oh my God, that would sell. And then he first says no, but then somebody says, whoa, that would sell a lot. And he goes, oh, well, then let's do it, implying that he wants money. But if he wanted the money and those Ken houses are flying off the shelf, why wouldn't he start selling the Ken houses and be happy about that? He wanted to go to Barbie world by roller skating and trying to fix that situation. So all of those elements. So that I think that was just a third strain that was mixed here in this movie. Alan. There's another guy called Alan in this movie. He had no reason to be in this movie. Apparently, there was another doll, but Alan didn't really have a point. So Doug says, I think that it's good to have a story about self-realization and breaking free from assigned roles. I guess I just have to see this film to see if I can make sense of it. See you later, Still Mongoose. I'd be interested to know what you think, Doug. I wasn't planning on making a big run to go see it. I'm glad I did. To be part of the whole thing. Well, I don't know. How many writers, Sable Phoenix, did this film actually have? It sounds like a classic write by committee boondoggle. But like I said, so maybe it's the marketing. I mean, obviously it's a huge brand. So people know Barbie is, okay, that's what James is talking about. Barbie is the greatest selling toy of all time. That isn't hyperbole. Any Barbie will sell really well, always has. But also the Barbie movie. So I don't like saying missed opportunity. But obviously we have here obviously we have here well, I'm forgetting where I was going with that sentence because I was looking at the comments and said, yeah, I've seen such different reactions about it. I was saying, so obviously we have an incredibly successful movie. It seems like so greatest opening yet this year. And obviously it is doing a lot of good things for people. I mean, it seems like people are very happy. You know, you got it. You can, we do these deep dives here. We do these story analysis deep dives here because we care about the story, and many of us are trying to write our own. So we study story. We do this kind of analysis here. Yes, but at the end of the day, also money does talk. So we cannot discount at all the fact that, I mean, I'm seeing lots of very happy social media posts about people when they go to see this movie, that they like the movie, that they're going to see, and you cannot discount that. You know, you can't discount that when you've got a major audience. Can you make a movie that people enjoy, that your audience enjoys. All the Barbie people out there, did they make a movie that people enjoy? And at the end of the day, if you did and you make the money, then that's what matters. We can sit here and we can critique the story, but it's whether it's through market. I guess we'll see how it goes. We'll see how it goes from here. But whether it's because of marketing or whatever else, they clearly connected with a big audience with this and have made people happy when they're leaving the theaters and stuff like that. So that's a big win. I mean, that's got to be rated as a big win. I don't know about the movie, but using 3 movies in one means 330-page scripts, not a single 100-page script. Yeah, well, I'm sure it was, so it was probably about 120 pages, I guess. But no, I think it's mainly, I think it's the adults. I think it's mainly the adults, the nostalgia of the adults who played with Barbie. Now, if you're playing with Barbie, then you can go see it. If you're a younger girl, you can go see it now. But that's probably one of the reasons why that could be a reason why it's so successful, because who has money? Who has money to go and watch shows? Well, it's the adults. It's the mothers and adult women today. Not that mothers aren't adult women, but whether or not you have children or not, if you played with Barbies, then if they have the right nostalgia, then they go and see it. So rather than just having to get mothers who have young kids to agree to take their daughters to see that. So, and I definitely think with some of the references, the appeal of the toys, I think probably in some ways, I was wondering if the toys, I'm sure a lot of people recognized, and I was wondering if they were trying to do that nostalgia thing that they were trying to do with He-Man Revelations. Like, with He-Man Revelations, they said they scanned a bunch of the toys. So when you're seeing, the Dragon Walker, wasn't the Dragon Walker in it? Or you're actually seeing a scan of the actual toy that is on there, and you have all of that. So I was wondering about that with all of the Barbie stuff, because you're probably seeing all of the toys and the Barbies that you played with 20, 30 years ago or 40 years ago. So I think that's also a big part of the marketing strategy of this, and getting women, even if they don't have young children, to come and see Barbie. Right. That's the thing with Barbie. Every girl going back to the 50s has likely owned a Barbie. So you want to get all of those people in the theater. And it seems like they were successful at that. It should be for all of them. That's probably who you're talking about. Okay. Well, does anybody else have commentary on that? I suppose that was my big exposition on Barbie this morning. So we may do some more of this, because I didn't, I wanted to talk to, and I invited, if you go see it, Doug, when you're on Table Talk again, you can give your thoughts on the movie. I texted and asked her if she wanted to talk about it, because I really would like to talk with her more about it on that side about the relationship between Ken and Barbie, because she is big on the relationship side of things, positive portrayals of sex. She was. So that discussion between her and Kamran was very positive, but I want to dig into specifically the relationship side of that more. But I didn't want to invite her on Table Talk, maybe Thursday or something like that, if she can come, and have me talk for over an hour about breaking down the story structure. So I thought the best thing to do then was, hey, let's branch out a little bit here on the Morning Grind, talk about this, and I'll go ahead and give my deep dive on the Barbie story structure, and then we can listen to what other people have to say more when they come on the show on the Morning Grind.